Hello, I'm Sarah. This is Hardcover Hearts, and this is my week of reading wrap-up, where I talk about the books that I read, what I'm currently reading, and potentially could read next week. This was a glorious 4-day weekend, and I read so many books. So I don't want to waste a single moment, so I'm going to jump right in. So the first thing that I owed you all a wrap-up of is the first book in the new author spotlight series that I'm doing with a group of people. So I think I've made mention of this before, that every once in a while I'll announce what the next author of the spotlight series will be. And if you are so interested, you sign up and we read works in chronological order, publication order, and really look at not just the evaluation of each book, but also how the author has grown in craft or changed, or themes that seem to be present in all of their work. And we started this with Toni Morrison. So we've already kicked it off. We're about to start our third book. We just finished our second, but this is the first, and I haven't had a chance to update you all. This is The Bluest Eye. And I'm so glad I held off reading Toni Morrison deeply until I had a group of people that were as smart, as focused, as insightful as the group that have joined us. This is a rich, deep text. It's written in about a time period, maybe the late 40s, early 50s, in Ohio, in Lorain, Ohio specifically. And we are looking at a Black community through the eyes of, specifically, at least as we open, of these young girls. And so we meet Claudia and her sister. And Claudia is, oh man, she's a firecracker. She's just filled with this indignant rage that I loved. I loved. She's very self-possessed. She's very smart. And she's observing what's happening around, observing what's happening at school, observing what's happening in her home, as well as the home of someone that they go to school with. And this little girl's name is Pecola. And we find out that Pecola has had to stay with them, has been placed in their home because she has been attacked by her father, and she's been raped by her father and is subsequently pregnant. And so this comes at you very, very quickly. And so this is really the story of not what happened, because we know it, but how it came to be. This is a story of generational trauma, generational neglect, but neglect out of survival, out of needs that the family members had to take care of themselves and take care of the family, but not able to do it with love. That was kind of a step further than what a lot of these people were able to give, given what they had been handed, what they had been dealt, what they had grown up in. This is so many things happen in the story. And as I mentioned, it's super layered. So we open with a Dick and Jane story, which for Americans is kind of like this childhood story book that everyone gets, and very short clipped sentences, and it's a reader, so it helps you learn to read. But it also is a propagation of what is right and good and thought about from, a white supremacist type of patriarchal standards. And she slowly deconstructs in the chapter headings, this narrative, and kind of shows what it looks like in the homes of these Black families. Quite interesting. So much of this is about Pecola and her desire to be seen, and internalizing racism and feeling that her life would be better if she had blue eyes. And I don't want to say too much, because it is a remarkable tale told so incredibly well, almost poetic language, very traumatizing, trigger warning for rape and incest. So big, hardcore trigger warning. One of the more horrifying scenes I've ever read in a book because of how she wrote it and the attention. She did not allow us to take our eyes away. Jarring, absolutely jarring. But this book was phenomenal. And I just think, my God, if this is where she started, what are we in for moving forward? So fantastic, remarkable work. Then this is all nonfiction November. I jumped right in. I always try to read something about Paris and something about artists. And so here's one that I wanted to read. This is Kiki Manre, Art, Love, and Rivalry in 1920s Paris. This is by Mark Braude. It's Kiki Manre because she married the famous artist Man Ray, but she's also known as Kiki de Montparnasse. And she's kind of this famous, kind of embodied the spirit of 1920s left bank Paris as a cabaret singer, as a muse, as a model, but also an artist in her own right. And this book really, yes, it does talk about Man Ray, and we have the kind of dual narratives of his coming, his youth, and then coming to Paris as a young man from the United States. And then we have Kiki growing up in abject poverty, not romanticized, which I appreciated very, very much, having to work at 12, being kicked out by her mother onto the streets, living rough on the streets, having to find a way to make money and survive, but being this over-the-top personality and really coming into her own when she started to model. There's all sorts of characters. There's, the whole scene of what was happening at the time, Duchamp and pegging Guggenheim, Picasso, all of these people and everything that was happening at that time. She was really at the center of it. I liked the exploration of her and her craft and the fact that she wasn't just this party girl. She really also painted. She also had her own thing. She even wrote an autobiography that famously Ernest Hemingway wrote the preface for and was banned in the United States. It was never put out here because I guess it was too salacious. But one thing I loved as I was reading this that I wanted to highlight because I think this just speaks to the character that he's able to illuminate for us. Friends would recall Kiki's generosity over the years. The Danish sculptor Lena Borgsen told of how at Le Couple, Kiki learned that a young woman crying nearby had lost her child and had no money to pay for the burial. After getting the bartender to bring the woman some brandy and a sandwich, Kiki went from table to table in the dining room and lifted her skirt in a can-can motion saying, "Please, that will cost you a franc or two." And it wasn't long before she returned and put the whole pile of money in front of that girl. So talk about a woman who knew how to survive in the world and also build community. I enjoyed this very much. Keeping on the nonfiction November theme, I got very excited when this came up on my holds. This is Mary Beard's latest offering, and this is The Emperor of Rome, Ruling the Ancient Roman World. Now, Mary Beard is known for SPQR. She's one of the best ancient classicists studying Rome, ancient Rome, and she's just brilliant. I did this in audio, and it was fantastic. She does the audio narration herself. As with SPQR, there's a ton here. It looks at the span of emperors, wants one-man rule really narrowed in Rome, and kind of goes behind the scenes and approaches it topically as opposed to personality. So she takes a look at, what kind of power did they actually hold? How did they actually live? What was the comparable of normal people to what an emperor, how they lived? We talk about dinners. We talk about their homes. We talk about the Colosseum and races and their engagement with it or not. It's so much detail, so much rich information, but told in such a way that really helps you draw through lines across all of these people, including things like, what's the job description of an emperor? What were the rules of succession? Because they were very confusing and didn't always make sense. I.e., there was one emperor who actually claimed to be the adopted son of one that had died years before he was even born. So nonsensical, but yet the public went along with it. Why? We know so much about all of the grand dinners and parties that the emperors had. She goes into some of the nuances of specific dinners that we do have records of, and for specific emperors, and how they liked what it meant when they had these dinners, who was tended to be in attendance, how it all worked. The whole thing was fantastic. It's a long one, just like SPQR. But it's one that I will return to because there's just so much richness there. And I am fascinated by ancient Rome and ancient Greece and ancient Egypt and France, all the stuff. Okay, next up, I was so kindly gifted this finished copy by Bloomsbury Publishing, the publisher. So wanted to thank them for this. This is The House of Doors by Tan Twang Eng. This is the story set in colonial times in, let's see, what year? 1921, in the colony of Penang, which is now Malaysia. This is colonial times, and it opens with a woman. We meet a woman named Leslie, and she lives in South Africa. Lives alone. Her husband has died. She receives a package. And in that package is the latest novel from W. Somerset Maugham. But there's no note, there's only a symbol. And this causes her to go into reflections of previous times when she and her husband, who was friends with Ma, he called him Willie, and he invited him to stay with them as Ma was traveling around. Already, Ma was a very well-respected writer, and he arrives with his secretary, Gerald, to stay with them for a while. Leslie is a colonial wife. They live a life of privilege. And colonialism is very strong in this book. It's very, very strong, pointedly so. And she is kind of a little bit put out, the fact that she was just kind of told that he would be staying with them and how long. And then she's really put out when it dawns on her the relationship that Ma has with his secretary, which is a romantic sexual relationship. And so she's never really been up close to homosexuals before. And it's challenging her morality. She develops a relationship with him and ends up telling him some stories that she probably would not have told anybody else. In an effort to be seen and to have maybe some independence. There's a lot going on in this book, including a kind of concurrent story of Leslie's involvement with someone who is a revolutionary who wants to be a leader of China and is kind of fomenting and trying to organize for a revolution in China. I thought it was a good book, very atmospheric. The colonialism heavy purposefully, but it was hard to read. It's hard to read people talking about the houseboy as a grown man, and just the flippancy with which all of that is handled. At the same time, ironically, that this woman is trying to help China have a new leader, go through revolution, be independent. So quite interesting. I liked it. I could see why it was on the Booker long list. I'm surprised it didn't make it to the short list, I have to say, because of some of the books that I have seen on the short list. But a strong read nonetheless. And I'm much more interested in reading more Somerset Maugham now, for sure. And then, as always happens to me in nonfiction November, I tend to want to buck the trend a little bit, and I get really excited because I read a lot of mysteries in December. There used to be a Cloak and Dagger Christmas. They're not doing it this year, from what I understand, which it just kind of hurts my heart. I get it. It's a lot to organize, but I loved it. I loved it. So I decided I needed a mystery. I needed to get something, to read something that was a little lighter fare. And my husband had started this, and I was all of a sudden, I knew I just had to read it. It was one of those impulses. And this is City of Vengence by D.V. Bishop. This is set in Florence in 1536. Great cover here. And I'm not sure if this one won awards. I know the second one did. Yes, it was shortlisted for the 2021 Wilbur Smith Adventure Writing Prize. This was fantastic. So we meet Cesare Aldo is a member of the police force, the Auto, and he is. We meet him as he's returning back to Florence. He has been asked to go with this Jewish moneylender and escort him back, be his security as he returns to Florence from Bologna. And on their way back, they're attacked, but they both survive. They arrive back into Florence, and the moneylender gentleman says, no, he doesn't need any additional protection. He's got it from here, and sends Aldo on his way. He ends up being murdered at home. So while Aldo is focused on solving this crime, he's also becoming implicated in a crime that happened from a different aspect. And that is that there is what appears to be a young courtesan, gorgeous robes, that was beaten to death in the alleyway. And upon looking more closely at the body, recognized that it was a man dressed as a woman. And through the investigation, this young man, beautiful young man, was a homosexual and was meeting with men, very, very prominent men, and keeping a journal of them, their tastes, their preferences, their physicality, all of that. Cesare Aldo gets pulled into this because he himself is gay. He is someone who has kind of stayed out of the fray because he has gotten himself a room at a bordello to offer some protection, but also give him an excuse as to why he's not married. This was fantastic. So many things we learn about the Jewish community in Florence, where they lived in the city, how they survived and lived, where their laws were to them more important than the Roman Catholic laws of Florence. And that was fantastic, as well as the story, the intrigue of Aldo possibly getting outed as a homosexual cop. Fantastic. And it was so good that I did it. I rolled immediately into the second. This one was actually, I think it was up for one of the awards. I think the award is the Dagger Award. So this second one is The Darkest Sin, and it was just sublime. I could not stop. In this one, we have Aldo being told that he needs to go to a convent and do an investigation because there's rumors that a man was seen scaling over and possibly trying to rob or get into this convent where all these nuns and young women are living. And so he goes there, and as he's looking over the grounds and as he's trying to do his investigation, he notices a young woman that looks so much like his half-sister. And it turns out this is his half-niece. This is his niece by his half-sister. And we learn more about Aldo's backstory. We learn that he was really thrown out of the home because he was the bastard child of his father. And when his father died, the same day the father died, he was kicked out of the home as a young boy and left to roam the streets and make his own way in Florence. And so he's had no connection with his family at all. And so we get a little bit of him and some of his trauma from his youth. At the same time, we're learning about the life in this convent and some of the challenges. Specifically, there's a faction in this convent that wants to close ranks and wants to close the convent, feeling that why are they doing all these good things for people who are not taking care of themselves? Kind of a right-wing thinking, right? They should be closed, and they should be only offering prayers and homily to Jesus and the Lord, period. Whereas another faction wants to stay open, wants to stay doing good deeds for the community. And what ends up happening is a man shows up dead, naked in the convent. And since Aldo is there, he starts to try to figure out what's actually happening. So another fantastic read. And I just found out that the third of the series is available on audio through the LA Public Library. Thank you, LA Public Library. So I will be jumping straight in. So yeah, fantastic. Now, let's talk about what I'm currently reading. I just finished this, but we're having the conversation today. This is Sula by Toni Morrison. This is the second. So I'm going to hold off talking about this until next week, just to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to share their thoughts in our check-in. Then, currently reading this whale of a book. I'm reading this for my In Real Life book club. And this is Whale by Cheon Myeong-Kwan. And this is translated from the Korean by, I wish they would put this on the cover, Cheon Kim. This is kind of a fable-ish story. Feels like a lot of magical realism, a lot of kind of strange things at play. And it's not always what I like in fiction, but there's enough interesting women characters here that's keeping my attention. So curious to see where this is going, because it's gone in so many different directions. I can't even tell you. Then I'm going to be starting a buddy read with Hannah of Hannah's Books. We are going to be reading Willa Cather's A Lost Lady this week. Really looking forward to it. It's a slim little volume. Then also starting for the Toni Morrison Author Spotlight series, starting the next one. This is Song of Solomon. Really looking forward to just keeping the Toni Morrison train going. And then I think this is probably going to be my last nonfiction for Nonfiction November. This is How to Be You, Simone de Beauvoir, and the Art of Authentic Living. Now, this is the UK edition. This is by Skye Cleary. The American one is How to Be Authentic, which is very interesting. It's a completely, that's a little subtle difference. I like this cover better. This is cleaner. The other one's, it's an interesting cover, not bad for an American cover. But so far I've been enjoying this. I'm only, I would say, maybe a fourth of the way through. So want to finish this month. So that's it. That's everything that I have on my plate. I am, just drunk with books right now. So happy to have had this 4-day weekend to film videos, to read, luxuriate in literature. It's kind of the best thing ever. So I hope you also had an amazing reading week, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Okay, talk to you later. Bye.